My name is Question Kayla, and I'm here to really unpack today the question of like, are you going to take that risk? Right. And so, like I've talked about before, vulnerability is something that can be very scary. I've dealt with that myself. And when we think about it, it's the one part of yourself that everyone doesn't have access to, right? Yet it's the one part of yourself that also reveals who you are at the core and makes people want to connect with you too, because it's your rawest version and it's the most authentic you. So today, when we think about vulnerability, I want to acknowledge that it is such a scary thing. And the reason why I want to say it's scary, and I can be authentic here too, is because when you open up yourselves to people, to the world, etc., different versions of yourself, especially versions of yourself that create marginalization, discrimination, racism, all these other dynamics that make you who you are, it can become very terrifying, especially if you've ever had an experience where you have opened yourself up and people responded poorly to you. It could be something as simple as you talked about your child life experiences or experiences at your workplace or experiences in relationships. And people responded to you in a way that created shame, created hurt, made you question like, what's wrong with me, right? And when you have those experiences, it can make you feel like, whoa, the risk is too high, right? I can't do this. I can't feel this. And so when we think about it today, like one aspect, especially as it talks about like in Brene Brown's book, The Gifts of Imperfection, she talks a little bit about shame. One thing is like thinking who is worth the risk, right? One aspect is thinking about yourself, like what is the risk for me, but who is worth me taking that risk for? Right. And then it thinks about the aspect of like your vulnerability partners, right? Who are the people that you have within your life that you feel like I can share this part of myself with them because I know I'm safe. I know that I'm going to be heard, I'm going to be valued, I'm going to be cared about. All those guards that you have that have come up, this is a space and people that I have to talk to. And that in itself is still being able to make sure that you get those needs that you have, that the parts of you that feel hurt, the parts of you that feel unloved, unwanted, broken, damaged, whatever it is, have spaces for their softness. I mean, everybody deserves that. Everybody deserves a space where you can open up and you're not worried if it's the wrong person because there's that trust there. And so when we think about vulnerability, note to self, it's also an idea of like being able to find those spaces where vulnerability is welcomed and is celebrated. And it's not where people might use that against you later. And it's not where you feel like you're going to be damaged or hurt by sharing that. And sometimes that has to be a mental conversation. Sometimes it has to be an emotional conversation just to reassure that you're going to be okay, especially if you have in the past opened up to people and they were close to you and they use that against you, right? Your guards are going to be up even higher. So I do want you to know, like, it is one of the most courageous things you can do. And I ask this question to you is like, are you going to take the risk? Who do you have in your circle? Who do you have in your network that you feel like this is an okay person for me to take that risk with? All right. What are some ways for you to kind of maybe even just like kind of gauge it to see, okay, is this okay for me to talk about with you, or even opening the door to create that space yourself of, hey, I'm going to tell you this about me. I want to share a little bit more about me, but I'm nervous about it. And this is how I need you to respond. Are you able to do that? When you think about ways that you can take that risk, right? You can allow people to see the most beautiful parts of you, maybe the parts that you don't see as beautiful, but the parts that overall come together to make you who you are and the sweetest version of yourself, right? Where are the spaces that you can share that? I started taking that risk through social media because I did not allow anyone in the world on my page. I had reasons. I had very valid reasons for that. And a learning process for me was to start allowing myself to be accessible, right? And not in a way of like where everyone has access to me, but in a way of where like no one doesn't have access to me, or there's a whole wall, and unless you know me, you don't know me. You see what I'm saying? So that was a risk for me to allow my pages to become public again, for me to even sit in front of you all today, even talk about this, right? Because like, you know how people are. But I realized for me, it was worth the risk in this way. And then the people I have with around me, it was worth the risk in that way as well, because I realized the sweetest versions of myself deserve to be shared. So I hope someone listening here can recognize that sweet version of themselves and also recognize it deserves to be shared too. And so I hope you take that risk.